Hi, good day everyone. So we are now in our new lesson, conducting tour inside the structure. So in this lesson, we're going to focus on the challenges, opportunities, and various strategies that we can employ while we are conducting our tour inside a structure. When we say structure, we are referring to inside a museum, or we're discussing a tour inside a government palaces or government agency, historical building. Another example would be a art gallery or a dark tourism sites such as fortress, dungeons, and prison cells. So in this particular area, of course, there are different environment that involves a conduct of tour inside and outside the structure. So now, specifically, we're going to discuss the following. So first, what are the okay, so let me just so what are the perks of conducting a tour inside the structure? Of course there are perks and there are many advantages to do so, no? Another one is, what are the challenges? So sorry, what are the challenges? And of course, we're going to have a sample, or for the strategy component, we're going to have a demonstration or sample considerations, or some of the things that might we apply in a particular scenario, particularly artworks or inside a gallery or the National Museum for Fine Arts. And another scene or case would be inside the temple or discussion of a religious artifacts. Okay. And finally, some tips that are going to be incorporated throughout the discussion, uh, techniques, tips, and of course, consideration when you're giving a tour spill. Okay, now let's proceed. Now, the perks of conducting inside the structure, of course, there are two. First, the environment is comfortable because there's no noise, there's no, the temperature is good for, comfortable because you have air condition, you're not exposed to the elements, there's no possible chance of rain. And of course, these are all attributed because of your environment, which is inside the structure. Next is, of course, the environment is also controlled. So basically, there is a consistency of quality of the guiding experience that we're having here, because you expect a particular exhibit to be there when you expect it. Okay, unlike the when you're conducting tour outside the structure, you might happen to have some factors beyond our control. For example, the hordes of beggars or street dwellers that might harass our tourists. Another example would be a bird that might drops their droppings inside the of course these are some untoward incident that may annoy our guests or our tourists. Another example may be stray dogs. Yeah, so this one is quite common, and of course, I do have encounters of stray dogs that not very good experience for the tourists, because you know um, in their place there is no stray dogs. Okay, in the Philippines, of course, even it's a tourist site, it's a tourist district. You happen to see many stray dogs. No? So it's a good thing. Um, yung guest hindi siya nasaktan or hindi siya nakagat ng aso. Another consideration is, of course, when you have the control environment, um, you have this kind of assurance that you're giving um, quality, because I mean, it's you can rehearse. There is a what we call a synergy of what you're trying to present, and then the evidence, which is the artwork, which is the artifacts, which are the illustrations inside the exhibit gallery or museum. So these are some of the evidence that might support, or we could use as visual aids, no? So again, when we're presenting it, of course we should be able to apply keys, no? Keep it simple and short. Of course, the only problem here, I think, would be there's so much information or so much artifacts or so much visual aids that the senses or the tourists are all quite overwhelmed because of their complexity, because of its numbers. No? So medyo that I think that is one of the major downside of it. But anyway, it's there are more pros rather than cons, no. So mas ako personally mas gusto ko mag-conduct ng tour inside a structure because aircon siya, hindi nakakabwisit, wala maingay, there's no chance for you to get into trouble by stray dogs, bird drops, no, yung mga droppings ng ibon, nakakainis din yan. At of course, yung harassment of street tellers or yung mga beggars natin. Okay? So, what are the challenges? Ang challenge lang naman dito is, of course, you're inside an institution. You have to follow the protocol of the museum. In case that's a government agency, you have to, of course, write a letter and then ask for permission to conduct a tour inside their premises because that's their policy. Of course, we have to follow them or to follow their rules and regulation because we are the guests. Okay, so that's the only downside. More than that, tingin ko wala na. Okay? Now for artworks, okay, so artworks or museum for fine arts, art galleries are quite unique because they are presenting work of arts. So again, in our study, tour guiding, of course, you have to develop your own appreciation. No? Kaya po may subject kayo about humanities, diba? That is one of the subject that will enhance your skill on how to appreciate art. And of course, you can share your appreciation or your love for arts to your tourists, to your guests and passengers. No. Another aspect for work of arts, normally these are the protocols. No, before we enter the museum or the gallery, we have to orient the following. First, if the prices, of course, in entrance ticket, does the entrance ticket already inclusive to the tour? Bayad na ba siya? Kasama na ba siya sa tour package or not? Now, if it's not inclusive or hindi pa siya kasama dun sa ating tour package, you should be able to tell it in advance. So, kailangan sabihin na natin in advance kasi baka mamaya doon pa magkagulatan. Okay? So, in most cases naman, kasama siya. And for the case of Philippines, most of our galleries are for free entrance, no? Especially yung ating mga museums, so libre siya as yung kasi dati may bayad pero konti lang, so you can absorb that, no? Another consideration when you're entering a museum or any consideration for artworks is that you have to remind your guests, particularly kung may dala silang bags, no? So if you're having a backpack, so that's quite uncomfortable because two reasons. First, it might cause an accident because pag ganun nila sa mga bagay dun sa museum, it might cause mabangga yung mga artifacts. Of course, that is priceless. Of course, kung mabangga nila yon, alam mo na, baka bayaran nila yon or syempre, kaso pa yan, di ba? Ayaw natin, no? Another thing is, of course, that is backpack or malalaking bag. Ayaw din ng museum sa loob yan. Kasi, of course, pwedeng isilid or kasi sa lahat ng mga museums, kadalasan ang nilolooban or ninanakawan would be yung mga historical museums, yung mga religious relics, yan. Madalas sila mabiktima ng mga robbery. Another one would be fine arts. No? So fine arts, kadalasan rin sila. Nagiging victim din sila ng mga robbery, especially yung mga napapabalita sa Europe, no, yung mga robbery, inside job, etc. So now, to avoid that, one of their precautionary measure is, of course, not to allow yung malalaking backpack and bag inside the museum kasi may mga artwork na kasi nilaki lang ng bond paper. And if you check what is the size of the ever famous Mona Lisa, it's kasing size lang siya halos ng wala pang size ng bond paper yun eh. So ganun lang siya kaliit, no. Of course, syempre, madali mo siyang isilid sa bag pag ganun lang kaliit, no. So unlike yung mga malalaking mga painting, medyo mahirapan ka. Kasi may mga painting din na maliit. So, pwedeng masilid. Okay. So, anyway, so that's one concerns, no? Yeah. So, these are some of the concerns. Now, another thing, of course, you have to orient your guests about the rules and regulation nga. So, one thing of that is bags. Another thing would be, of course, basic na to. No eating, no drinking inside the museum, no? Inside the museum premises. Siyempre, alam naman natin reason. First is later siya. Another thing, baka madami siyang artwork. Another thing then, of course, we have to really inform our guests not to, they can take pictures or video if the policy ng museum would 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 do so. But in most cases, since this is artwork, there are some private museums na ayaw nila mag-take ng picture inside because the painting itself is a copyright material, no? Ayaw nila no. Another thing is, of course, mas ayaw talaga nila yung may flash because it will create yung photo burn, no? So masusunog, unti-unting nasusunog yung painting because of the flash photography ginagamit. So these are some of the basic rules. I think it's quite general for the whole art world to follow this rule. So this is, of course, syempre ating mga tourists, nakakalimot minsan kasi masyadong excited. No? So now, our role is to tell and inform them about this rule again kasi baka makalimutan. Okay. Now to present a sample artwork. Okay, so ano na tayo? I-out ko muna to ha. I-end ko muna yung aking pag-share para makapag-focus tayo sa picture ko. Okay. So, okay. Okay. So, stop share ko muna. Okay. So, okay. So now I have a painting. Okay. So this is example of painting. Of course, when you're discussing a painting, you have to introduce yourself muna, no? Diba? Bago kayong sumakay sa... Bago ang lahat kasi normally, diba? Ina-assume na natin na ikaw yung tour guide ng day one. So nakilala mo ng mga turista mo. Another problem here is, in most cases kasi sa real life natin, hindi ganun. So iba yung possible na sundo sa kanila sa magpo-conduct ng tour sa day 2. So you have to introduce your name first while the tourists are all inside the couch or sa tour bus natin or nasa ano na siya sa ating bus, no? So sabihin mo yung pangalan mo. Again, of course, syempre, the usual protocol natin, you have to have your ID and your license ready with you, no? And of course, your dress or yung damit mo or yung attire mo for that day should be unique or madali kang ma-detect or madali kang makilala. So that is the reason why most tour guides wear red polo shirt, or they wear yellow. Now, I have a friend na sinusuot niya is pink polo shirt kasi madali siya ma-identify. Okay? Kasi bakit? Kasi kung white or black lang siya, pag na-mix ka na sa crowd, hindi ka na madali ma-identify. Now, if you're inside the structure, particularly maliit lang na may structure, hindi nyo siguro magkakakita-kita na kayo doon, no? Pero if we're talking here a structure na medyo malaki, like for example, the Imperial Palace in Beijing or the Forbidden City, or we're going to the crowded places of Rome, Vatican, I think you have to really distinguish yourself kasi chances are your tourist might be lost, di ba? Kasi nga, ang dami ng tutor, yung isa naman sobrang laki. So that's one of the possible scenarios here. Now, in our case, I think it's quite, pwede naman to acceptable na ito damit ko na ganito lang suot ko kasi nga, number one, it's not color neutral, it's not white or black, it's blue, so madali naman ako ma-identify dahil ilan lang naman yung susot ng kulay blue. Now, of course, syempre, dapat meron pa rin ano yan, no? So, pinaka-the best talaga, meron siyang pangalan sa likod ng company, may pangalan dito sa harap, and you wear your ID. So, that's the best thing. Now, while discussing the painting, so inside the museum now, so before you enter the gallery proper, you have to orient your tourists with the rules and regulation of the gallery or museum. In some cases, si security guard, minsan siya nag-orient sa inyo. But of course, you might ask the security guard to allow you to discuss the rules and regulation instead of him, di ba? Kasi meron namang malaking bulletin board doon na nagsasabi, these are the regulations of this institution or regulation of this museum. So, pwedeng doon ka tumapat. So, while discussing this, no? So, para may visual aid ka rin. Now, going inside the museum, of course, there are so many artworks. So, maraming artworks, no? Marami kang painting na pwedeng discuss. Of course, syempre, hindi naman lahat yon i-discuss natin. Okay? Because, number one, it will be, that's too many, might be wasting much time. Another thing is not all art or artworks there are relevant and of course would interest the group. No? So of course, pili lang tayo ng siguro kada floor natin, we should select siguro mga two or three artworks that we can discuss. In my strategy kasi, particularly if you're discussing uh, National Museum for Fine Arts, ang dapat mo lang i-discuss doon would be the painting, yung pinaka-crown jewel ng National Museum for Fine Arts would be the Spolarium, and then the other painting by his best friend, Hidalgo, sa kabilang side. So that's the two painting that you would spend most of your time in that particular gallery, no? Sa second floor, you can discuss, of course, yung mga contemporary masters natin. Like for example, yung works of Ben Cab, the works of Ocampo, and of course, yung mga if the works of of Juan Luna. That's one of the yung Parisian life ni Juan Luna in second floor. So of course, hindi naman lahat yon madidiscuss na natin kasi napakahaba na nila art, napakarami. Now, of course, after discussing the last piece na gusto nyo i-discuss, siguro we could allow them, that we could suggest na, okay guys, so we're going to meet or reconvene here in this spot. So I will give you around 1 hour to immerse yourself to the beauty and arts of the Philippines. So don't ever forget to, let's reconvene here at this exact hour. Let's say 3:30. Let's meet here in 3:30. So okay, so after that, we're going for your dinner. So, ganun, no? So, ganun lang siya. So, you give them time to explore the place kasi hindi naman porket tour guide ka, samahan mo na sila or ikaw na mag-direct. Pwede rin naman yun, pero in that will be parang, for me, hindi masyado na-appreciate. Kasi syempre, there are some tours who would spend more time in abstract, more time for realism, more time for impressionism, more time for sculpture, those things. No? So para they have the freedom of choice. Okay. So now, discussing artworks, no? First, when you're discussing artworks, you must place yourself yung facing natin, no, against the artworks. Kasi hindi ka pwede mag-discuss ng tour guide yung nakaganyan ka. So, blocking ka, no? Another one is you're too close to them, di ba? So, of course, proper, sorry since this camera, so proper, ano po tayo, proper facing nun. So what's the proper facing? Of course, that's common sense. So if this is our artwork, you should be here, okay? Uh, Pasensya nyo lang, medyo limited ang kilos natin because of the camera. So artwork here. Let's say monument here, okay? For example, spolarium, so it's quite big. So saan ka lulugar ng spolarium? So basically, you allow the group at the center. You can discuss at their side. So, pwede yun. So kayo nasa center kayo lahat, ikaw nasa side ka ng group mo. Sa side ng group. So basically, all of their eyes are pointing to the spolarium. Tapos ikaw nasa gilid ka nila para ka ng nagbo-voice overlap. Okay. But in this case, kasi this painting is quite visible naman siya, kaya natin siya kasi hindi siya ganun kalaki. So, maliit lang naman siya. It's a portrait size. So, ganitong style ang gagawin natin. No? So, ganyan siya. So, discussing this painting. So, painting could be interpret or pwede siyang i-discuss into a different manner. No? So, maraming approaches. Okay. The first approach would be the most easiest, would be the technical. So you just basically describe the painting, its title, its artist, and what about the subject, the style. So this or the technical. For the technical approach on how would I deliver this painting, I could say, okay, let's discuss first the artist. This painting was created by the artist named Armando Perasso of 2014. So this painting is about a woman. So the style of the artist is they use the modern or contemporary abstraction, particularly cubism, and mixed with the color scheme of the impressionist masters. No, so these are some of the techniques that the artists have used. And this painting is a acrylic painting on canvas. So yeah, so that's the technical description. Okay. Of course, tourists would not be thrilled with your description by the description of its technical techniques, no? Hindi naman siya masyadong thrilling sa kanila. Kasi describe mo lang yung nakikita natin. No? Alam namin, oh yeah, it's a painting of a woman. Yeah, we can read the artist's name. Okay. We can also see that isn't oil painting, it's an acrylic painting, right? And of course, we can also see that's a portrait in canvas. No? So basically, it's hindi siya ganun ka-happy because of your description. So now we have to include, okay, the cultural and historical perspective. So when you say cultural, this painting is representing some sort of a broader concept. Example, so the subject of this painting is a woman, right? So what can you deduce with this painting? Okay. Sir, the painting is sensual. You're correct. So this painting is essential because it invokes shapes like round, circle, and of course a stroke, the silhouette of the interplay of the tone, the light and dark is sexy. Because if you could notice, that is some sort of the shadowing part of this. The silhouette is right? Some sort of resemblance to a lingerie. Okay, so it's quite sexy in nature. Another thing is that the dress itself, though it's concealed with the abstraction or it could be some style, it's invoking a feeling of sensuality and openness. Because if you could, if you can really, if you could really picture this in the real picture, real life, this lady is wearing a lingerie. Okay, another thing is that, okay, so that's the symbol here. So it's something to do with sensuality. So now, women, why women? Now, we go now to the historical perspective of the artist. Who is the artist? Of course, for a tour guide to know that, you have to conduct research, no? Extensive research now. So what's the life story of the artist? Who is he? So basically, when you research, the artist is of course, he is mostly, okay, most of his work circles around women, particularly women in different scenarios, different imagery. So now, what is unique with this particular artist is that he can visualize women in a different role. Of course, imbuing the kind of sensuality that invokes in this portrait. Of course, blending the subject, the women, with its environment, because the painting does not only showcase, because most painting, especially the traditional painting or the old masters, are the background is really dark. So basically the background is nothingness, so it's black, so it's saturated with uh, black color, so wala siyang sense, no? So the main focus, or the master would want you to focus on the subject itself, not onto the background. But this guy or this artist is different because there is an attempt to bridge the background to the subject. So basically, the background is not just the background, it's also part of the subject. So basically, that's why it's overly decorated. No? So it's overly decorated with flowers, with circle lines, and of course there is an attempt to kind of portray spatial distortion. Well, bakit may spatial or parang space distortion here? Because he would try, or the artist tries to really bring out the impressionism or the impact here, because tignan nyo parang distorted yung line niya, no? So here is, if you look at the lady, the line is really straight. It's really fine. But if you check the background, some sort it creates a distortion or the disorientation of the lines. So somewhat it's quite perpendicular, naging tilted siya, no? So ganun siya. Now, another faucet here is the color combination. So the color combination is a combination of warm and dark colors. So it's a good interplay indicator that the artist is, by all means, I could sense that the personality of artist is quite a cheerful persona. So that's how you make comments. Now, another factual information here is, of course, how much is the painting. So that could be an is because not all of your tourists would be an art lover. So knowing the price of the painting is also a good indicator of its value, and of course its substance. No, so this painting worth around that's around 150,000 in the last auction. So that's a very not di ko naman masabing very expensive. I think that it's expensive for us, no, 150,000. Now, of course, painting are not just painting. It's a investment for some people because they believe that when you buy painting over the period of time, it's just like a diamond. It age and of course it appreciate the value. So similarly, most rich person also do some business with art, because that is a another investment vehicle for them. So yun po. So that's art. Okay. So propose mo. Okay. So now let's go now with another type of structure. Normally in the Philippines, we are somewhat obligated to visit old cathedrals or churches, particularly in Intramuros, because Intramuros is our first seat of power in the archipelagic colony of the Philippines. Of course, a city or a settlement is not complete without a church or, in this sense, a cathedral. So when you're conducting Intramuros tour, it is necessary for you to include some religious sites, cathedrals, and of course, religious artifacts. Okay, so of course, now visiting any religious sites or religious works, okay, of course, you have to really, as a tour guide, we have to really bridge. Of course, not all would be, I mean, there are some religious considerations to follow. For example, there are religions na hindi sila pwede pumasok sa inside the church because of that's their belief. So, of course, for that case, we could advise them or we could encourage them to go to the nearest souvenir shop, or they could drink the coffee, or they could explore the place nearby, provided that of course we're going to see them after this kind of time. For example, for me, okay, there is a fine coffee shop nearby, so you can take your coffee break there, and of course we're going to end our tour at around 4 o'clock here, so we're going to meet here at 4 o'clock. So I hope to see you. Okay, sir. So yeah. So that's it. So kasi may mga yun nga, may mga system of beliefs tayo, or may mga tao kasi na of course they cannot enter the other religion sites, no. So yeah. Iba naman okay lang kasi you're not conduct or they're not participating to any religious activity, no. So that's tolerable for their conscience. Uh, for others naman, for example, talagang medyo strict talaga siya. Of course, pag ganun kasi, let's say it's, yun nga, ibang group siya or ibang religion na talaga siya. sa itinerary mismo, tinatanggal na siya. For example, it's a um, medyo Arab country siya or medyo Malaysian tourist, of course, predominantly Muslim siya, no? So, of course, we won't include yung ganong portions sa tour itinerary natin, no? If requested. So, sasabihin naman ng tour operator sa'yo or nung travel agent if necessary kasama yung site na yon. Okay? Kasi, of course, baka may iba tayo pwede idagdag bukod doon, no? Or kasi syempre, kanya-kanya naman yan. Of course, there are two things na sure tayong hindi magkakasundo sa buhay, no? So, politics and religion. And of course, approach natin dito as a tour guide kasi some sort we are obligated to discuss religion because that is vital component of our culture as a Filipino na shape tayo, of course, with our religion. And of course, our Filipino culture is somewhat indispensable when you discuss Catholicism, no? So talagang naka-ingrain siya. So of course, we have to approach in discussion with religion as neutral as possible, in a sense that we are not encouraging them to convert to our religion, and also we are not making defamation or we're not criticizing this religion. Okay, so we are just presenting it in a neutral manner, para kang academic purposes lang. We're not encouraging you to join the religion, and we're not also criticizing the religion. So that's how you do it. Okay, so let's go. So before you go to any religious site, okay, just like what we did in the art gallery or museum for fine arts, we have also to discuss various rules and regulation, particularly if the religion is somewhat yun nga, unique to them, no? So syempre we have to discuss the do's and don'ts. Okay. So, if your tourists are local, for example, local Filipino naman siya, so syempre, meron na silang presumption na ano yung dapat nilang gawin because they are local, so they are quite exposed with the Christianity, no? So, alam na nila yung mga local custom natin inside the church. So, medyo may familiarity siya. Of course, syempre, pag pumunta ka naman sa mosque or sa ating mga Islamic brothers, no? So syempre they have another different custom there. Of course, that's the time that we're going to orient them first, no? So syempre may mga procedure sila. So in this exercise, we're going to examine yung ganong necessity, no? So in this, for example, we're going to visit yung isang temple sa Thailand that's called Wat Po. So we have to really discuss the do's and don'ts for Philippine travelers, no? So example here. So before we enter the temple, the Wat Po temple, so it's a Buddhist temple, so there are Buddhist practices or etiquette that we should follow despite you're not attending or not participating the Buddhist ceremony. So for tourists, there is a temple policy that no exposure of skins. So bawal po tayo magsuot ng sleeveless and to show our skin below the knee. So of course, don't worry, we have sarong inside the bus, so you can borrow one here. For example, here is the sarong. Kunwari, example ng sarong. So if you need one, okay, so just approach me. So of course, that will take covering to your skin. Another thing is, of course, when you enter the temple, especially, you will see there is a shoe rack there. So there is a shoe rack there. You have to place your shoe there. Of course, you cannot walk at the temple grounds with your shoe. Why? Two reasons. First, this is a sacred temple. So, of course, that's part of the respect that we give to the temple. And second reason is for sanitation purposes. Because monks and layperson are meditating on the same floor that we're going to walk on. So out of respect to them, we take off our shoes. Okay, so now let's proceed. Okay, so in this main gallery, okay, so this is the main the focal point of this temple, and it's the main attraction for tourists. So you will see now the image of the reclining Buddha. So it's a reclining Buddha. So you might ask, so your tourist might ask, sir, why it is, or Arjel, why is reclining? Why is some sort of lazy or some sort of um, medyo sa sexy pose? Okay. So you have to explain, of course, syempre, Christian, and keep it simple and short, no? So the explanation why the Buddha has this kind of pose is that the Buddha is already coming for nirvana, meaning to say he is already weak and dying. So he cannot sit in lotus pose because his body cannot allow. So he cannot also stand because he has no strength left for him to stand. So the next possible pose that he can do, and also to concentrate and still do the meditation, is of course using this reclining pose. So of course he lie his body, and of course he's trying to elevate his head, and of course he gives all of his will and concentration, so as in preparation for his ascension to nirvana. Now, if you ask me, what is nirvana? Nirvana is a basic Buddhist belief in the release, a release from the suffering, which is, according to the belief or the beliefs of the Buddhists, is that we as a human is in this realm of samsara, which is the realm of sensual pleasure and also the realm of suffering. Now, the Buddha is a person who have attained complete nirvana or cessation of suffering or dukkha. Of course, that's the Buddha. And of course, why it is covered with gold? Okay, so it's not gold, sir, or Argel, is that gold? Yeah, it's gold. So I'm sorry, you cannot touch the gold because that is against the policy of the temple. Um, but you can pray on the other side. You can see the feet. There is a script there, so you can touch the feet, but the body, no, you cannot touch that. Okay, that's a gold. It's a gold coated statue. So why gold? So just like our saint and our religious icons or image in our Catholic Church, of course, gold is a symbol of adoration. We give gold as a symbol or a token of homage. Now, among the metals, gold is the most precious because in ancient time, we believe that gold is a metal emanating from the brilliance of the sun. And of course, nothing really would be befitting to a deity or godlike figure like Buddha is, of course, to be coated with gold as a symbol of our homage. Okay. Okay. So, tourist mo gagano. Okay. So again, so of course, since there are not Buddhists, okay, so there are much more questions. Now, if there are Buddhists there, you can allow them to participate in your discussion. But in most cases, since we're Filipino, syempre, hindi naman lahat tayo Chinese, no? Mostly Chinese lang naman Buddhists, no? Of course, wala tayong masyadong katandem doon. Okay? So that's it. So now, if we ask, let's say may nagtanong pa na another question is, could I take photo inside the temple? So particularly in this scenario kasi, it's quite tricky, no? There are some Buddhist temple that allows you to do, you can take picture, it doesn't matter. Now, there are some Buddhist temple that are quite strict that, of course, they don't allow taking a picture. But in this case, it's allowed. No? So, pwede. So, yun siya, no? So, case-by-case policy. So, bago kayo pumunta sa isang temple, make sure na, of course, syempre, siguro alam nyo na yan dahil ginawa yung itinerary, nag-research na kayo kung pwedeng picture or hindi. So, kung pwedeng picture, wala tayong problema. Kung hindi siya pwede, dapat hindi na sinasama sa itinerary kasi problema pa yun, no? So, yun. Okay? So, ngayon, syempre, kung may mga pahabol na mga tanungan dito, nasa yung toilet, CR, okay. Kasi it's a temple, no? So, minsan kasi, kakalakad na naiihi or nawiwiwi. Okay, so this is a good thing na bago kayo sumakay ng bus or ng coach nyo, you have to take a toilet break, no, bago kayo mag-ano. Kasi bakit? Kasi syempre ang hirap naman pag sa daan pa kayo abutan ng call of nature, no. So bago kayo sumakay ng bus or ng coaster ninyo, you take the toilet break. Okay? So that's one tip that I could share to you. Okay? So that's it. Okay, then okay. So that's it. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. So ngayon, for our discussion today, so as our reflection, so could you share siguro you can share your other experiences that you can, or idea na ano ba dapat pa natin include when we're conducting tour inside a structure. So let's say consideration, yun nga, habol natin, di ba, toilet. So toilet break for, especially if there is a long walk, no? Di ba, 2 hours na kayo nagdi-discuss sa museum. So syempre, natural din na kailangan na ng toilet break, no? So yun. Ano pa? So dagdag na lang natin sa comment, no? So thank you very much, and of course, have a nice day. Bye-bye. Ingat kayo. Take care.